Hi, my friends, and welcome. We're gonna play Clues by Sam again. It's Friday, and we have a hard one. And I think I've seen some controversy regarding this game or the state of it. I don't know. I'm gonna first play it and then check it out later in Blue Sky, see what they're talking about. But if you don't know what Clues by Sam is, it's a daily puzzle game where you have 20 people. Each of them may be a criminal or an innocent, and you gotta figure out who is what using the clues that they give you. There's no guessing necessary, and I'm here every day doing this. I encourage you to try as well. So there is a link in the description if you want to do so. And if you just want to follow along, or if maybe you get stuck and you want to check how I do things, we're gonna do this now. So let's start. We start with Terry telling us that Anna is one of two innocents in the corners. Only two innocents in the corners? Interesting. Anna now tells us that both criminals in row 1 are connected. So we know that Chloe has to be one of those criminals because that's the only person who's connected to any of the other people who could be a criminal. So that's Chloe for us. And now Chloe tells us that an odd number of innocents on the edges neighbor her. How is that helpful? If we know that there's only one, oh, she has one other person who is, oh my god, how did I not get that? She has one other person who is on the edge and neighbors her. So that's Igor, and Igor couldn't be an innocent because then Chloe would have an even number of people neighboring her on the edge who are innocents. So I know that Igor is a criminal. Sorry about that. That was weird. Now, Igor tells us there are exactly 3 innocents in column D. 3 of them, you say. One of them is Terry. It could be that the other 2 are Nancy and Zoe. Could it not be? That's 3. Oh. I guess we know that Nancy has to be one of them. It couldn't be both Daniel and Nancy, because then there would be 3 innocents on the corners, and Terry says that there's only 2 innocents on the corners. So Zoe and Daniel are a one or the other, and Nancy is for sure one of the innocents of the 3 innocents in column D. Now Nancy tells us that Gabe has more innocent neighbors than Zoe. What do we know about Gabe? Gabe has 8 people neighboring him. Zoe has 3. And Zoe could at most have 3 innocent neighbors, but we know that Gabe has more than that. Or more than any Zoe has. That is interesting as well. Because I want to do tag here. Daniel and Brian are one or the other as well. What do I know here? 3 instances in column D. And we're talking about Zoe and Gabe, but we don't know much about Gabe's neighbors. And Gabe only has one neighbor on a corner. So how does that help us? Seems like I'm slow today. This is very interesting. So that just means that I'm gonna take my sweet time to really understand everything. It's really hot here today, and that makes me want to just lay down. Both criminals in row 1 are connected. There's no way for them not to be, and a number of innocents on the edges neighbor Chloe. That's either gonna be Brian or Daniel. Oh, one thing that we know is that since there's gonna be for sure one innocent on a corner here, Uma couldn't be an innocent. Same reason why Nancy has to be one. So Uma is a criminal. Now Uma tells us that only one of the two innocents neighboring Chloe is Hall's neighbor. So one of the two innocents neighboring Chloe. Where's Chloe? Chloe has two innocent neighbors. One of them is in row one, and Gabe and Hall are a one or the other, because there's only gonna be one more innocent to neighbor Chloe, and that innocent is Hall's neighbor. Oh, so we know that Hall neighbors both Brian and Daniel, so whomever of them is the innocent eliminates Gabe as a possibility, which means that Hall is innocent and Gabe is a criminal. And we don't need Uma's clue anymore. Now Hall tells us there are more criminals in column B than column D. We know that column D has a total of 2 criminals. So column B has to have at least 3 of them. But we still don't know a lot more than that. Gabe now tells us that all criminals in column B are connected. Since we know there has to be at least 3 criminals in column B, and Gabe is already a criminal in column B, K couldn't be an innocent. Because if K were to be an innocent, then there's no way for 3 criminals in column B to be connected. So K has to be a criminal as well. And now K tells us that Uma and Brian have an equal number of criminal neighbors. What do we know about Brian? We know that Gabe has at least... Oh, we don't know how many innocent neighbors Gabe has. We just know that he has more innocent neighbors than Zoe. So we know that Uma and Brian have an equal number of criminal neighbors. Brian so far has 2 criminal neighbors, Gabe and Chloe, which means that Uma has to have 2 as well, and possibly 3 of them. Yeah, possibly 3 of them. If Ryan... Let me see if I'm thinking about the right thing. If Ryan is innocent... Oh, if Ryan is a criminal, actually, because all criminals in column B have to be connected. There has to be at least 3 of them. So if Ryan is an innocent, Uma has one of the innocent neighbors that she needs. She needs one more, at least, because Brian has the second one. So let's say that Vera is the second one. Let's say also that Paula is a criminal as well. Now Brian would need a third criminal neighbor, so that would have to be Frank. That could work. That could work, and still Gabe could have more innocent neighbors than Zoe. There's still more people here who could be innocents. So what else am I not seeing? Is there a way for Uma and Brian to not have an equal number of criminal neighbors? If anyone here in column B is an innocent, it couldn't be Ryan. Because if Ryan is an innocent, both Vera and Ryan have to be innocents. And that would break because now there's no way for Uma to have the same number of criminal neighbors as Brian. So Ryan has to be a criminal. Now Ryan tells us that only one row has exactly 2 innocents. That row is row 1. And the 2 innocents are Anna and either Brian or Daniel. So no other row has 2 innocents, which means that row 2 couldn't have any more innocents because it has Hall already. So Frank has to be a criminal. And now we know that Brian does have 3 criminal neighbors, which means that Uma has to have 3 as well. So all of these people are criminals. We don't need case clue anymore. Paula now tells us that each row has at least 2 criminals. That's good because we have one row that doesn't have 2 criminals yet. So either Joyce or Larry are gonna be a criminal and the other one an innocent. And why is that? Why is that they're one or the other? They could both be criminals because each row has at least 2 criminals. It doesn't mean that it has 2 criminals at most. So I'm gonna untag that and take a look at everything that I have already. They couldn't be a one or the other. Both of them have to be criminals. Because only one row has 2 innocents. And if Joyce and Larry are one or the other, let's see that they are one or the other, then row 3 would have 2 innocents. And that can't be. Ryan says that only row 1 has 2 innocents. So both of these guys have to be criminals. Nice. Same thing for row 4. Scott couldn't be an innocent, otherwise row 1 and row 4 would have 2 innocents, and that can't be. So Scott has to be the criminal too. And now we know, go back to Nancy's clue, Gabe has more innocent neighbors than Zoe. The only way for Gabe to have more, or is that we couldn't have both of these guys, Ina and Zoe, be innocents because that will break row 1. I mean, row 1 and row 5 would both have 2 innocents, and that can't be. So what if they were one or the other? What if Zena were an innocent and Zoe a criminal? If Zoe is a criminal, then Daniel has to be an innocent, and that will make Brian a criminal because of Daniel. And now Gabe doesn't have more innocent neighbors than Zoe. They have the same number of innocent neighbors. So we know for sure that Zoe couldn't be a criminal. Unless Xena is a criminal, right? I guess what we know for sure is that Xena couldn't be an innocent. I'm trying to think about why the row wouldn't have 4 criminals. If Zoe is an innocent and Daniel is a criminal, then Brian is an innocent. And now this is fine. I think the thing is that Xena has to be a criminal always, because there's no way for both her and Zoe to be innocent, because then both row 1 and row 5 would have 5, not 5, but 2 innocents. So since there has to be at least one more criminal in row 5, that criminal has to be Xena. It doesn't really matter what Zoe is at the moment. Oh, Xena tells us that Scott and Chloe have an equal number of innocent neighbors. Where's Scott? Scott is here, and he has 2 innocent neighbors already. Chloe is gonna have for sure 2, because for now she has Hall, but she's gonna have one more who's either gonna be Brian or Daniel, which means that Scott couldn't have any more innocent neighbors. So now we know that Zoe is also a criminal for sure, and Daniel is an innocent, which makes Brian a criminal. Good, I'm glad I thought that through. Ooh, that was almost 15 minutes. Now I want to see what's the controversy about. Let me check that out. Okay, so we have the link of the scenario that people are asking for help. The thread has already been solved, but I want to understand what people were having trouble with. And it was, as far as I understand, people trying to mark Brian as a criminal because of the scenario. I like that this is the last scenario on the game. And the thing that I talked about when I was solving it is that we don't know for sure if Zoe is a criminal. Because like I said, we don't know for sure that both of these people are criminal. If I try to mark Brian as a criminal here because I'm pretty sure that Brian couldn't be an innocent, because if he were an innocent, then how could... Yeah, it wouldn't make sense, actually. Like, there's no way for us to be sure that Brian couldn't be an innocent here. He could be an innocent if Xena were to be an innocent. But that will break. Because if Brian is an innocent and Xena is an innocent, there's no way for Zoe to be an innocent as well. So she would be a criminal. And Zoe couldn't be an innocent as well because then both roles would have the same number of innocents. But also there's no way for row 1 to have more innocents. So yeah, I guess we are sure that Brian couldn't be an innocent. The thing that is that Brian could also be an innocent even if Xena isn't one. What? Brian could be an innocent if Xena isn't one. Then Daniel would be... Oh yeah, he couldn't. Because then... Yeah, this could happen. Brian could be an innocent. This scenario would work. So we can't rule Brian out as an innocent. Can we rule him out as a criminal? What's the discussion? Let me go on Reddit and figure this out. Yeah, I think people are just not aware that these two could be criminals, as they indeed are. Oops. Because this works fine. There's no clues pointing towards these being one or the other in the whole game. And that's an error of deduction that I do sometimes. And I usually catch myself when I'm doing that and I say it out loud. And I think I did that on video. I don't want to look it back, but I'm pretty sure that I made that. I almost made that mistake of thinking that these were one or the other. And then I caught myself and I just went back to through the proofing process, and I got these two for criminals. So yeah, I think we learned something that it's important to test all of the scenarios. And that's a mistake I made a lot in the beginning. And I also had my time where I discussed this with Games by Sam, because I thought that the game wouldn't allow me to mark something that I wasn't sure of. Or actually mark something that I was sure of. But sometimes you're sure of something, but you haven't exhausted all of the scenarios. And in this situation, you have to exhaust the scenario in which both of these guys are criminals. And see that that's possible. So that's not what you have to look at. It's not Brian that you have to look at, it's Xena. Xena in every scenario is gonna be a criminal. So yeah, I'm gonna leave that there. Let me go back to my own solution. And I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you played it and if you had trouble there, if I helped maybe teach you something, or if you'd like to discuss that further. And I hope you had fun. I'll be here again tomorrow with more Clues by Sam. And I'll also be here tonight playing Dead Format, which is a VHS horror game in which you play a movie and you enter through the VHS into that movie. And each scenario has a few puzzles, but it's also set in sort of a horror scene. So we're gonna have fun doing that. And I hope you're there to join. I'll see you then. If not, see you tomorrow for more Clues by Sam. Bye bye.